Welcome to the Adventurers Writing Club. The Ghost and the iPod by Suzanne Kehde. Chapter 1. iPods and Murder. This was a job for Jade Hill and Associates. Someone had stolen Evan Keith's iPod. Jade sat at her desk after geology and took out a new spiral notebook and a No. 2 yellow pencil. She wrote neatly at the top of the page, Evan Keith, October 15th, 2009, stolen iPod, fee $1 a day. She scooted up to her desk, crossed her legs to let the folds of her long black skirt settle around her ankles just above her socks and red canvas sneakers. She pulled off her glittery baseball cap so she could look at Evan more directly. Of all the 7th graders at St. Bartholomew, she was the only one with her own detective agency. It had been established in 2007 and had a reputation to brag for, although bragging was something Jade would never consider. She didn't even need to advertise. Her clients sought her out. It was amazing how many kids needed stuff to be solved and settled. Jade figured hers was the only kids detective agency in all of Bonaparte, Mississippi, but she'd never done an internet search on kids detective agencies, so she didn't know for sure whether she had competition. St. Bartholomew was a Catholic school where the teachers were all nuns, who wore traditional long black habits complete with headdress and wimple. Jade was positive that the nuns had tiny wheels attached to their shoes. The nuns didn't walk, they glided everywhere, but you couldn't see their shoes because the habits completely covered their feet and shoes. It was like being in a Madeline book, thought Jade, except that there were a lot more than 12 little girls in a row here. And fortunately, the kids weren't required to wear uniforms, so Jade could do her long skirt, cool shoes, and appropriate hat thing every day. Most kids weren't Catholic, but their parents sent them here, probably because they thought the private school was safer and better than a public school. What a joke! Even at the private Catholic school, things got stolen and bad stuff happened. Jade was glad about that, otherwise there'd be no need for Jade Hill and Associates. That's $3 in advance. If I find your iPad in less than 3 days, the remainder of the advance will be returned. I spend a lot of time on that playlist, Jade. Evan scratched his neck and dug into the front pocket of his jeans. This is lunch money for today and tomorrow. He handed her a little wad of crumpled up bills. Jade unfolded them, smoothed them out, and placed them in an envelope on which she wrote Evan's name. Jade knew he wanted her to feel sorry for him, but she was a businesswoman. The fee was the same for rich or poor, or in this case, hungry or fed. I imagine Stanford Lane will give you a loan with a fair interest rate. Stanford, an 8th grader, had his own loan agency. He charged 7% unless payments were late. Then the interest rate skyrocketed to 37%. The rumor was that most anyone had ever had to pay him in interest was $3.70, plus the original $10 loan. Despite the exorbitant late fees, he stayed in business because kids always needed money for all sorts of things. Tell me what happened. Don't leave out a detail. Jade looked up at Evan with a businesslike but encouraging smile. I was in Sister John's class. I had this frog all pegged out for dissection. Sister came up right behind me and pulled the butt out of my ear and scared me so I yelped. Farted too, I think. 'Cause Bailey laughed so hard I was hoping he'd piss in his pants, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. Evan prided himself on his farting abilities. And what happened next? And please just give me the facts. No need to elaborate, Jade said to keep him on track and avoid any demonstrations. Sister put my iPod on her desk. When I asked for it at the end of class, it was gone. Did you see anyone other than Sister John go near the desk? Evan blew a spit bubble as he thought. Nope. He shook his head and scratched his chest under his t-shirt. Anything else you can tell me? Yeah, if the son of a gun who took it messes with my list, I'll tie his neck in a knot. Why do you think it's a boy? He covered his upper lip with his lower, as he thought. Guys steal. Girls don't. That's sexist, Evan. Girls are just as capable of stealing as boys. Evan moved his mouth around as if he were tasting his idea. Okay, but maybe you can find it today so I can have money for fish sticks tomorrow. I love those things. Jade wrote a few more notes about the case. Facts of the case. 1. Victim's iPod confiscated by Sister Jade during biology. 2. iPod missing at end of class. 3. Victim reports no clues. Jade closed her notebook, shook Evan's hand, and said, "We'll keep you posted on our findings, Evan." Within a few minutes, she was out on the sidewalk and was almost instantly joined by Drew, one of the associates in Jade Hill and Associates. Jade filled him in on the case. "Don't suppose Sister took it?" Drew asked as they walked up beach to catch her bus. She ignored his question. She was supposed to. "Any known felons in that biology class?" "There's Bobby Lee. He likes other people's stuff. You might start with him." "Leave it to me." "I'll talk to Sister John," Jade said. Everett pulled up beside them on his bike. He jumped off and walked it. "We have work?" Everett was the other associate. "Some Lightfinger got Evan's iPod." "Bummer, he has a cool playlist. What period?" "Third, Sister John's biology. She confiscated it and put it on her desk. It was gone by the end of class." "Somebody saw something," Everett said with the knowledge of a seasoned investigator. "Hey, you guys come over later so we can plan Evan's case. See ya." Jade speeded up to a slow jog, waving back at them without bothering to hear whether they'd come over or not. She knew they both would. Almost every school day, Jade stopped at the cemetery. There were 913 gravestones, and not one of them had her mother's name on it. Some gravestones were so old, the letters on the stones could no longer be read, and the stones looked as crumbly as sugar cookies. Most people were buried in crypts above ground because the river flooded every year. The swamp and bayou always threatened. The town was surrounded by treacherous water. Whenever kids wanted to explore or play in the water, parents and old folks in town warned that even the experienced could get lost and taken by the swamp. That only made Jade want a skiff more than ever, and every year she bugged her father about getting a skiff for her birthday, but he always said no, sometimes absolutely no. One year, coffins floated downriver from Bonaparte to Catfish Hole. For days she saw pickup trucks slide through town back to the cemetery with the waterlogged coffins, and that's why there were over 1,000 crypts in the cemetery, some for whole families. There was not one marker for her mother. Jade's father had brought her to the cemetery once when he was very tired of her questions about her mother. He pointed to a spot under an ancient willow where there was no grave, no marker, no crypt, just the trees and the grass. That is where she would be if she had died. "What do you mean, if she had died?" Jade had yelled at him. He'd patted her on the shoulder and just said that her mother hadn't died. She'd just floated away. That was all she ever got out of him. She even opened a case on her mother the first year her agency was in business. The case was still unsolved. Jade dumped her school stuff on the grass and slumped under the tree with her back to the trunk. She had a memory of her mother, or maybe it was a dream, that she'd had from the time she was a little bitty girl. Her mother wore a white summer dress, long and filmy, that flowed and rippled down to her ankles. The dress came in at the waist, tightening up at her mother's tiny midriff. Her mother was tall and elegant. Her hair was pulled back from her face. Jade was at the attic window, watching her mother's bare feet disappear from sight as she floated upward. Jade called, "Mama, take me, please." Jade reached her arms out the window toward her mother, but it was like she couldn't even see Jade. Her mother hovered. Her hands were palms out. Butterflies fluttered around her. She bobbed a little. Then slowly she drifted upward, like milkweed in calm air. She made no effort but for a small movement of her feet, as if she were dabbling her toes in a cool creek. Jade stretched out from the window, holding on to the sides, as she watched her mother